In Indianapolis in 1876, Robert Ingersoll spoke to a crowd of over 10,000 people who had come to remember the sacrifices made in the Civil War. One more poetic section of that speech brought people to tears. The lyrical images he created with those words became one of the most popular remembrances of the Civil War. Here is an edited version of those words. The past rises before me like a dream. Again, we are in the great struggles for national life. We hear the sounds of preparation, the music of boisterous drums, the silver voices of heroic bugles. We see thousands assembled and hear the appeal of orators. We see the pale cheek of women and the flushed faces of men. We are with them when they enlist in the great army of freedom. We see them part with those they love. Some are walking for the last time in quiet wooded places with the maidens they adore. We hear the whisperings and the sweet vows of eternal love as they lingeringly part forever. Others are bending over cradles, kissing babies that are asleep. Some are receiving the blessings of old men. Some are parting with mothers who hold them and press them to their hearts again and again and say nothing. And some are talking with wives and endeavoring with brave words to drive from their hearts the awful fear. Kisses and tears, tears and kisses. Divine mingling of agony and love. We see them part. He is gone, and forever. We see them all as they march proudly away under the flaunting flags, keeping time to the grand, wild music of war, marching down to the fields of glory and to do and to die for the eternal right. We go with them, one and all. We are by their side on the glory fields, in all the hospitals of pain, on all the weary marches. We stand guard with them in the wild storm and under the quiet stars. We are with them in the ravines running with blood. We are with them when they are unable to move, wild with thirst, the life ebbing slowly away among the withered leaves. We see them pierced by balls and torn with shells in the trenches. We are home when the news comes that they are dead. We see the maiden in the shadow of her first sorrow. We see the silvered head of the old man bowed with the last grief. These heroes are dead. They died for liberty. They died for us. They are at rest. They sleep in the land they made free, under the flag they rendered stainless, under the solemn pines, the sad hemlocks, the tearful willows, and the embracing vines. They sleep beneath the shadows of the clouds, careless alike of sunshine or storm, each in the windowless place of rest. Earth may run red with other wars. They are at peace. In the midst of battle, in the roar of conflict, they found the serenity of death. I have one sentiment for soldiers living and dead. Cheers for the living, tears for the dead.
Tomorrow, we observe Memorial Day, federal holiday for our nation where we're remembering and honoring those people who have died while serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. I think over time, we have also thought of it as a way to remember anyone who has served in the armed forces, even though that is technically Veterans Day. So this is on the first Sunday of September. It marks the beginning of summer, which lasts until the Labor Day, which is the first Monday in September. It used to be called Decoration Day at first, and this is a political cartoon I found around 1900, and the caption says, "You bet I'm going to be a soldier too, like my Uncle David when I grow up." And the gravestone is for someone who died in Gettysburg. And this is about when Memorial Day began, around the time of the Civil War. So it was called Decoration Day until 1967, when the official name was changed to Memorial Day. And it was originally celebrated at the end of May, on May 30th, but then it was changed to the last Monday in May to provide a convenient 3-day weekend. So, at first, there was no standard protocol of how the holiday should be observed, but over time, traditions developed. And one of them has been the custom to visit cemeteries, to place flowers on graves, and American flags on the gravestones of fallen soldiers. On Memorial Day, gravestones at Arlington National Cemetery are decorated by flags, and many volunteers placed those flags on the graves. Troops, in particular, placed more than 220,000 flags on graves at Arlington. So those are the people we know. But we also include the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier to honor those people who died but who were never identified. One local situation that we found just recently, there was a man, Elwood Bailey, who flew in World War II, and his airplane went down. Some of you may have heard about this. The Jackson Heritage Center has done a film about him. He was never found, and he was just presumed lost until last year when his dog tags were found and were returned to his family. And so there has been a film made about him. So over time, the protocol has developed. First of all, we have parades. This one on the left is from 1870 in St. Paul, Minnesota, and the one on the right is more recently from Jackson. But the idea is that there are marching bands, and there's an overall military theme, and there are members of all branches of the service that participate, along with military vehicles from various wars. Another protocol has to do with the flag. The flag is raised briskly to the very top of the staff and then solemnly lowered to half-staff, where it stays until noon. At noon, then, this flag is raised to full staff for the remainder of the day. In 2000, our Congress passed a National Moment of Remembrance Act, saying that at 3 o'clock on Memorial Day, we should all pause for a moment of silence and remembering. Of course, it's a day for speeches and bands. There are marching bands everywhere. I looked in the newspaper to see where there would be marches and bands tomorrow, and anywhere you go, there will be some kind of parade. So this is the Marine Marching Band on the right-hand side. It was interesting for me to find out that many Civil War reenactors take part in battle reenactments, not necessarily, I think, on Memorial Day, but the idea is that they want to honor those Civil War soldiers who died. So a lot of the early start of Memorial Day seems to be pretty unclear, except that it was honoring soldiers who died, and it was pretty clear that it was the women in the community who were making sure that this day was observed and that the graves had flowers on them. Some of the earliest observances of Memorial Day were in the South, and this is a tribute in Alabama to the Southern soldiers. And it was the women who made it happen. The South started observing Memorial Day 3 years before the North did, just to say. The practice of decorating graves with flowers is an ancient custom. And soldiers' graves were decorated in our country before and after the Civil War. There was an 1863 cemetery dedication at Gettysburg, and some people think that because of that Lincoln started Memorial Day. Probably not. But the year following his assassination, there were commemorations that were widespread, and over 600,000 soldiers on both sides of the Civil War were honored. So that's quite a huge leap. However, as far as we can tell, the first Memorial Day was because of this person, General John Logan, who was a commander-in-chief of the Grand Army of the Republic, an organization for Union Civil War veterans, and he made a proclamation that said we should have this day of observing. So he did that in 1868, and just 3 years later, in 1871, Michigan adopted that day as an official holiday as well. And just less than 20 years after that, the entire nation of northern states recognized it, along with the South. So again, numerous communities have claimed that they started Memorial Day, and this has been going on, but finally in 1966, President Lyndon Johnson said, all right, this is where it started, Waterloo, New York. This was a place that had celebrated the day in 1866, and they've had various marches and so forth, but it's probably not true. But they have gotten bragging rights. In 1913, one veteran from Indiana complained that younger people born since the war had a tendency to forget the purpose of Memorial Day and make it a day for games, races, and revelry instead of a day of memory and tears. Well, indeed, that's the case. The Indy 500 runs Memorial Day weekend. The NASCAR Coca-Cola 600 runs on this weekend. And of course, we're all barbecuing with our friends. In 1915, this man on the left, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, who was a doctor with the Canadian Expeditionary Force, wrote a poem called In Flanders Field. Yeah, its opening lines refer to the fields of poppies that grew among the soldiers' graves in Flanders. And then 3 years later, inspired by that poem, this woman on the right in a lovely 3-cent stamp, Moina Michael, went to an overseas conference, and she wore a poppy pinned to her coat and brought others to give out. And so in 1920, the National American Legion adopted it as their official symbol of remembrance, and you can see them selling poppies all around on this weekend. The poem In Flanders Field by John McCrae reads this way. In Flanders Field, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders field. So there have been monuments erected to remember those who have fallen. This one, the Marine Monument, which honors the Battle of Iwo Jima, and the raising of the flag over Mount Suribachi is one that I've known for since a child, because my father was a Marine. I'm very proud of it. This was an intense and brutal battle that went on for a month, as I understand it, and 74 years ago today, there was a photographer who captured this image. Well, he captured it, and then he looked at the picture and he said, oh, the flag's too small, we'll take a second one. They added a bigger flag. And then this picture has become iconic. This bronze monument was created after that particular photograph. And it has been so powerful because it speaks to these soldiers appearing to rise out of the ashes of war. They're seen as a symbol of strength and teamwork and camaraderie, and of course, the raising of the flag as well as a symbol of the dominance of our nation. And the fact that you cannot see any of the soldiers' faces gives them a universal quality as well. This memorial is the World War II Memorial, which opened in 2004 in Washington, D.C., and it was long overdue to honor World War II veterans. And it's interesting because this is supposed to be a somber place, but you can see it's just all this open air, and it has a wading pool that you're not supposed to wade in, but people do. And it has fountains, and it's very hard not to feel like you want to move around in it and experience it as opposed to just standing in one spot and being awed by it. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial in DC has probably been the most controversial one because the person who designed it was Asian, and of course there was an Asian war, and people hated the fact that it was dark, they hated the fact that it was abstract, they hated the fact that she created it, they hated the fact that it went into the ground, and yet it has become the most personal of all those monuments because the name of every soldier who died in Vietnam is on that wall. You can go to that wall, you can put your fingers on the name of the person you know. And no other monument has that kind of personal connection. So people come to find those they know, and they leave gifts there. They leave combat boots, they leave flowers, they leave poems, they leave food, they leave all kinds of gifts, because it is a personal connection. So, of course, we have fireworks at the Cascades. I heard they were last night, but I'm not sure about that. So Memorial Day speeches have become an occasion for veterans and politicians and ministers to commemorate the Civil War and then all the wars afterwards. But it's interesting to me, especially in terms of our congregation, that it's considered a non-religious or civil religion, in that it has, with the Civil War, it introduced a theme of death and sacrifice and rebirth, but it's celebrated by everybody of all religions. Memorial Day has become the centerpiece for that, and it just seems to it goes with what we believe as well. So this Memorial Day integrates the local community into a sense of nationalism, which I think is nice. It keeps it with us. Here is a man from Jackson playing taps. So I am in no way a proponent of war. I am an absolute dove. I think there are better ways to solve problems in the world than to hurt and kill people who you don't agree with. But for the women and men who served in our country and returned and were harmed or did not return at all, we have to say thank you.
I'm Paul Jenkins. I'm a veteran of the U.S. Army, 1966, 1967, 1968, Vietnam. US 54955-161 is my service number. And I was selected to read this title this reading by David M. Horst, titled The Last Soldier. And I've added the title. You see this on books sometimes. My title is Memorial Day, Observations and Thoughts. I saw the parade pass by with the last soldier marching. I saw politicians standing by, not in pride, but in shame as they recited the names of the dead and admitted their failures. I saw the marching band step in time to silence. No more hymns of glory could they play. I saw mothers and fathers saying, "No, I will not sacrifice my child on the altar of a nation's pride." I saw flags no longer madly waved, but held in quiet reverence. I saw the granite statues cracked and crumbling, symbols to the waste of war. I saw the last soldier give his final salute and the trumpeter playing taps one last time. I saw the end of brutality and death. I saw the graveyard flags turning to threads by the ceaseless wind.